All right, so I'm recording. Welcome to Tuesdays, Zoom Tuesdays at the Capitol with the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance. Our citizen advocates join together every Tuesday morning to get together and talk about what's happening at the state capitol. So welcome everybody. Today is May 4th, Star Wars Day. It's week 18 of the legislative process, but more importantly, there's only a couple of weeks left of the 2021 regular legislative session. Um, in terms of an update, in terms of what's happening at the state legislature, this is really conference committee week. And we'll review in just a minute the process, but essentially, right now, House and Senate negotiators are working out the differences between all the omnibus budget bills, so that they can come to an agreement on one version of each of these bills and send them back to the bodies. So the way it works is, and I won't go too long on this, but if you guys remember from Schoolhouse Rock, when a bill goes through the legislative process, it goes through all the committees. It ends up coming to the House floor for a vote or the Senate floor. And what we're talking about with the budget is we're talking about omnibus budget bills. So these are really big bills that get assembled, and it took the whole legislative session to get these budget bills put together. So the House has a number of these omnibus budget bills. The Senate has a number of these omnibus bills. They're divided up by budget area. So you got education, you got higher education, you got transportation, you got criminal justice or judiciary, and public safety. You have the health and human services. All of these budget bills were put together over the course of the last few weeks, and they have all passed the floor. So all the House has done their version of all these bills. The Senate's done their version of all these bills. As you might guess, they're different, and they're significantly different. The Senate in Minnesota is controlled by Republicans, and the House in Minnesota is controlled by Democrats. In fact, we're the only state in the nation right now that has a split legislature, where one party controls one body and the other party controls the other body. All the other state legislatures in the country are controlled by one, either the Democrats or the Republicans. There are split governors, but in terms of the legislative bodies themselves. So these are very different looking bills, and the way that they're sorted out is through conference committees. And so there are 5 members from the House and 5 members from the Senate. So there's a group of 10. They get appointed to these conference committees, and then these conference committees meet and work out the differences in their bills, essentially come into agreement on a single bill. Then they send that single bill back to both the House and the Senate for a straight up or down vote. No amendments. It either goes up or down. If both of the bills pass, or if the bills, excuse me, the other way I said that wrong. If the bill passes both the House and the Senate, then it goes to the governor. And then the governor can either sign or veto that bill. We haven't got to that point yet. I can talk about that maybe next week. And so these conference committees are just starting to meet right now. They usually go through a pretty predictable process. They do introductions. They do an overview of what's in the bill. They point out what's the same, what's similar, and then what's different. What's in only one bill, what's only in the other bill. And that's what they're going through right now. So no decisions have really been made. They will adopt language that's exactly the same, but they haven't really started adopting spending any money yet. So there's one other sort of caveat with that, and that is that the conference committees need what are called targets. They need the House and Senate to agree on a target for each of these budget bill areas, and that hasn't happened yet. So the conference committees can't really start working through the budget until there's an agreement on how much money that bill gets to spend. And so that's a whole process. And so right now we're just sort of watching these committees meet, watching them give broad overviews of the bills, go through multi-page spreadsheets, and that type of thing. The only committee that hasn't met yet is the Health and Human Services Committee. The Senate just appointed their members yesterday. So we should see that. I haven't seen it on the schedule for today, so perhaps tomorrow or the next day. So anyways, it's a pretty long process that they go through, these really complex, long bills. And it's very political and wrapped up in trying to find an agreement between the House and the Senate on how much money they're going to spend, what are they going to do with taxes, and then of course they have to try to negotiate with the governor, because the governor eventually will have to sign these bills in order for them to become law, or let them become law without his signature. That's a distinction without a big difference here. But there's a process, a negotiating process that we have to go through, and nobody's blinked yet. Nobody's played the first card yet, so we're still waiting for that to happen. So at any rate, it's a long and complicated way for me to say stay tuned. The process is just getting started, and you can take a look at it. Now, what's different this year is because and I think Mark brought this up earlier before we started recording, is that the House and the Senate have different rules in terms of the Capitol. The House is doing all of their work virtually for the public, for committee meetings. None of it is happening in person, with the exception of the floor. There's a limited number of people allowed, representatives allowed on the floor, but none of the committees meet in person. The Senate is doing hybrid committees, if the chair would like. And a hybrid means that it can be a combination of both in person and virtual. And so some of these conference committees are hybrid, some are just virtual. And because it's dependent on technology, what leadership has decided is that there's going to be 3-hour blocks of time that the conference committees can meet. So instead of having to wait around all day for the call of the chair, essentially the conference committees meet either from 9 to noon or from 1 to 4. And they alternate between the House and the Senate every other day. And so there's no more of this game playing with somebody holding the gavel or leaving the meeting open and you have to stay awake until midnight to see if they're going to meet or they're not going to meet. And so it's going to go back and forth. So, and they're switching the times around. So like, for example, the public safety bill started yesterday morning in the Senate, and so it switches to the House today and it switches to the afternoon. So it's kind of crazy, but it's basically, if you want to check the schedule, they meet from 9, a group of conference committee meets from 9 to noon one day, then 1 to 4 the next day. They switch between the House and the Senate, and there's about a dozen of these different bills that they're putting together. Maybe not quite a dozen. I should probably count them to be sure. But at any rate, that's what's happening. So we're watching Cassie's Law and the Judiciary Bill. We're watching the Spinal Cord and Traumatic Brain Injury Research Fund in the Higher Ed Bill. We're watching the Traumatic Brain Injury, Spinal Cord Injury Registry in the Transportation Bill. And of course, the Health and Human Services Bill and all the medical assistance issues that affect people with brain injury is a big complex bill that we're watching too. That committee hasn't met yet. So that's where things are at. I don't know if that was interesting or boring or both, but that's where things are at right now, and we will continue to watch that. So if you're interested in checking out any of these conference committees and watching any of this action, the link is in every Tuesday's email that goes right to the live schedule. And if it's going live, you can just click on it. If not, you can see what time it is and come on back and watch it. So lots of different ways to get that on your computer and or your TV. And if you want any help with that, just give me a holler or a text. So that's the update for this week. Stay tuned. Hopefully we'll know a lot more by next week. But again, it all depends on the House and the Senate coming to agreement on a global target for each of these budget committees. And that'll depend on what they want to do with taxes, and then how much they want to spend, and then how much they want to spend in each area. Then those committees, once they get their targets, still have a lot of work to do to figure out what they're going to do. So if they're told they get to spend this much money or they have to cut this much money, then they have to go through all the differences and all their bills and come to an agreement on that. So anyways, lots of stuff going on, lots of politics, and that's where things are at. So I'll end the update there.